How does your camera placement change, if at all, in that kind of situation when you're like...
It is a rainy morning this morning, and I'm heading out to kind of just go scout around this new farm I got permission to. Hunted it once, had a doe and a couple fawns underneath me, but I didn't really go too far back onto the property because I didn't want to spook everything. So today I got perfect conditions for it. It's been raining. It's not pouring right now, but it's wet all around. So I'm guessing I probably won't bust anything. Kind of a tricky property to hunt with the winds. All the fields are on the west side of the property. All the woods are on the east side of the property. So typically, you know, you'd want a wind to blow out of the woods into the field. Well, that's probably not going to happen at this kind of a spot. So you kind of have to improvise. So I'm going to walk the edge of a swamp, kind of work my way through these woods, look for sign, whatever sign I can find. It's been raining, so I'm sure all the scrapes and stuff are washed out, but hopefully I'll be able to see, you know, whatever's there to see. There's a swamp that that doe ran through, right down the middle. There's a lot of brush, some small saplings out there. I mean, it would be great bedding because a predominant west or southwest or northwest wind is what we usually get. It blows right out there. But the food's all up there. So I'm kind of trying to play it safe on staying away from the food. Maybe I'm just gonna bust them all out, but I need to at least walk this. All the raindrops hitting the leaves. And that's just absolutely perfect conditions to be walking property if you haven't done any scouting and you don't know where to go. There's a scrape right there. Pretty good scrape. Gets thick back there. It's probably where they're bedding. There's standing water down there. There's a little bit of cover right here on dry ground they could be bedding into. Wind's blowing like this. Another scrape. That's where the swamp is. That's where the cornfield is. It all narrows down right here. This lane. So I'm gonna walk back, see if he's bedding back there. Well, it's raining pretty hardcore now. Pretty much walked most of the property that I wanted to walk, just looking and trying to get a good idea of where I think this buck's coming from. What I've concluded is that there's this finger of swamp right here, and I found some scrapes on that side of the finger, and then over here there's a huge conglomeration of scrapes inside of the woods along the edge of that field over there. And so my thought is he's coming off this edge right here. Right now the wind's blowing right into the cattails, so it's a perfect setup for him on a west wind to just slip right out of the cattails, cut through this 30 yards of timber, and then feed on corn in this field right here. This also happens to be the lowest spot of probably the whole property, so works out extremely well for a buck. I don't know how big this buck is. Whoever else is hunting here that has permission with me, I haven't met them yet, but they've got I think about 5 cell cams that I've been able to count, and a few ladder stands. So they're definitely keeping tabs on stuff too. I don't know, I'm assuming they got a picture of this guy, but there's some pretty decent sized rubs on some of these cedars. So I don't think it's like a monster, but there could be a pretty decent 3-year-old deer in here. It's good to know. I think if I was to hunt a singular spot, it would be here. So that's good to know too. That way I don't waste my time by hunting around the area. I can just kind of come right to my number one spot that I think I need to be at and then hunt it. So I'm gonna go back home, play with the dog. I feel like I've kind of winded probably most everything in that swamp. I don't really care. I needed to go do this and I got all my intel that I need, so gonna head out. Glad I have this thing. Piece of paper that has information on my hunting permission and stuff. Because I got about I don't know, 30 yards from my truck, and I had like a little sedan pull up, turn around, come back, and then just sit behind my truck. And I was watching it to see if anybody was gonna get out, because you never know. But I mean, it could have been the landowners too, for all I know. But I always put my little piece of paper up saying who I am, what I'm doing, with my contact info. Always a good idea. Just a little tip for you. These roads out here are treacherous, I'm telling you. Crazy. People go flying down these things, and they're very high traffic. So here's that swamp right here. And the trail, I saw those does right there. That's the trail. But they just jumped out of this other side and then ran right down the smack dab center of that swamp. One of my buddies, Sam, just smoked a monster buck. John just texted me a picture. Calvin said that he'd been on it, got some daylight pics of it, and he was trying to figure out what wind to hunt it or something like that, but he just got that last night, so John was out taking some photos of his buck for him, and that thing is a stud. Like, that's a big deer, big Michigan buck. So, I got here. I didn't give myself really any time to get any kind of B-roll getting out into this tree because it was raining pretty steady. So I tried to take the opportunity of the rain and I just booked it out here. And now as I was getting set up, the rain stopped, so I feel like my timing's pretty good. This is kind of a wind that's probably you would consider good for the deer and not good to hunt. However, I found this big opening behind me, this big old grass opening. So instead of sitting exactly where I would prefer to sit, I moved about 15 yards down so that my wind will blow out over this opening. This is the second sit that I've ever sat on this particular farm. Just got permission for it. It's really cool. I really was hoping that it would kind of hold deer a little more than it seems to be. It seems like a lot of the deer might be held up in a big swamp. But then again, I don't know nothing about this place. Like, the neighbors own just tons and tons of woods, grass. That could be where that big buck is at. I don't know. That's the open area right there. A little bit of an opening in the corn. I feel like the deer might want to walk that. Got a scrape down there on the corner. 2 scrapes over there. 1 scrape right underneath me, just about. Side of the opening that I was trying to use to keep my scent away from the deer.
next week or so.